Good afternoon. Welcome to the Virginia Senior Medicare Patrol monthly webinar. Today's webinar is Understanding Scams, a look at tactics used by scammers to trap us. We're going to talk a lot about that and then also talk about how to avoid some of those scams. Just to share the agenda for today. First, we're going to look at the difference between a salesperson versus a scammer, the differences between a good salesperson versus a scammer. We're also going to look at emotional manipulation, how scammers use your emotions against you. We're going to look at phone tactics, ways that scammers master phone technology and conversations. Looking at phishing scams, understanding how scammers use emails and text messages to steal your information. And then also pressure, looking at how scammers use time and pressure to make you act quickly. And so that said, just want to introduce myself. Again, I'm Sean Smith. I'm the state director for the Virginia Senior Medicare Patrol. And just to give you some background and what makes me tick, I just share a little bit that I started my career in sales and marketing. I used to do pharmaceutical sales. I actually left sales to go into ministry. I'm an ordained minister. I studied Christian counseling and I served as the pastor of mission and outreach for a small church in Martinsburg, West Virginia. When I left ministry, I went back into the corporate world, but also felt like it still wasn't my place. So I came back into the nonprofit world and I served as the director of workforce development for Goodwill of Central and Coastal Virginia. And in that role, I worked with underserved communities to help them find employment. Quite generally, my passions are around advocacy, advocating for people who can't advocate for themselves, but also empowerment, helping them develop the skills so that they can advocate for themselves. I love working with and serving underserved communities as well as program development. As it relates to empowerment, again, I just want to share, we talk about scams all the time. We talk about them very specifically. We do presentations on COVID scams, we do a presentation on imposter scams. And what I like to do to help people get empowered, and what this presentation is more about, is scams more broadly. Imposter scams change every day and COVID scams change every day. And rather than having to teach you about every change that happens, which I'm certainly willing and able to do, I want to teach you how to think about scams more broadly so that you can see a scam coming regardless of the changes that happen. And so that's what this presentation is more about. We're not going to get into the specifics of a lot of different scams or specifics of any particular scam, but we're going to talk about some of the overarching themes around how scammers work. So just to get started, the Senior Medicare Patrol was started by the Department of Health and Human Services based on some of the things that we're going to talk about right now. The US spends about $800 billion annually in Medicare. However, they've estimated that they lose about $50 to $60 billion through waste, fraud, and abuse. What that calculates to for the state of Virginia is that we spend about $11 to $12 million on Medicare each year, but we estimate that we lose about $1.5 billion through waste, fraud, and abuse. And for that reason, the United States government, the Department of Health and Human Services, developed the Senior Medicare Patrol, whose mission is to empower and assist Medicare beneficiaries, their families, and caregivers to prevent, detect, and report healthcare fraud, errors, and abuse. And we do that through outreach, counseling, and education. So the financial piece is a huge piece of why the Senior Medicare Patrol was started. There's a Senior Medicare Patrol in every state of the union, plus 4 US territories, and they all focus on education, outreach, and counseling. They each have their own personal 1-800-FRAUD hotline, which they man calls from people around their state. And then they all partner with the Department of Health and Human Services Office of the Inspector General for cases of suspected fraud. In Virginia, there are 25 area agencies on aging, and we partner with 22 of those AAAs or area agencies on aging. We sponsor community outreach events. We provide educational training sessions similar to this one, to our monthly webinar, but also to a number of different groups around the community each month. And then we also distribute resources to individuals and groups to help fight fraud. And so while, again, that financial piece is a huge piece for why we do the Senior Medicare Patrol, there's another piece that's really important to me, and that is our seniors. Because one thing that we realize is that seniors, many seniors, are traumatized from the interactions that they have with the scammers. And scammers can threaten them, can share misinformation that scares them, and they can be traumatized. I spend a lot of time talking to people reporting fraud that I have to make sure and reassure them that the bad things that the scammer has said to them, it's really not going to happen to them. I have seniors asking me, you know, are we sure they're not coming to get me, to arrest me? And it's like, ma'am, it's certainly not going to happen. Or they feel bad that they've even just fallen for the scam. And many of them sometimes cry on the phone because they are upset that they're getting old and they can't manage their own situation. And they feel like this is just something that's added to it. And I reassure them that it's not their fault, that scammers are very good at what they do. And it's easy to be manipulated by them if you're not aware of what's going on. One thing that we do know, however, is that when we train seniors are 70% less likely to engage with scammers, meaning when they're trained, they don't even connect with the scammers. They can see it coming and they can ward it off. For those that do engage, they're 40% less likely to fall for scams. And so that's why we do this. We want to make sure that they are empowered so that they can protect themselves from scams when they're happening. So that said, again, here's the agenda. We'll start with looking at salesperson versus a scammer, emotional manipulation, phone tactics, phishing, and then the pressure that scammers put on us. So let's talk about salespersons versus scammers. What's the difference between a good salesperson and a scammer? And I really want to make the distinction here between a good salesperson versus a bad salesperson. Doesn't mean that every bad salesperson is a scammer, but it's possible. And so we're going to look at some of their character traits. So first of all, a good salesperson is going to have a win-win mentality, meaning that they want you to win in this transaction, but they also want to win themselves. If you're going to make a purchase or make a buy, you're going to win, and then they're going to benefit from it as well. Whereas a scammer has an I win personality or disposition. They really don't care about what you get out of it. They're going to tell you and promise you the world, but really what they're after is what's in it for me. And so they're really not focused on your needs other than just telling you what you need to hear to get them to where they want to be, and that is scamming you. A good salesperson is looking at a long-term relationship because they know if they can keep you as a loyal customer, you'll come back and you're going to buy again and again and again. And so they're really going to try to build a relationship with you. They're going to try to figure out your name, what your needs are, how to help you in as many ways as possible. And they're really going to work with you to really make that connection so that you understand them and they understand you. You trust them and they trust you because they want a long-term relationship. Whereas a scammer is going to be relational indifference. Now, again, some scammers may try to build a relationship, or at least seemingly, but generally they're going to be relationally indifferent. They really want to get to the transaction because they want to get out of you what they can get out of you. The more time you spend with them, the less time they can spend scamming other people. Salespeople, good salespeople, are willing to make small sacrifices now for the big payoff later. And we see this a lot now, especially around car dealerships. Many times today, when you buy a car, not only will they sell you the car, but then they'll also give you free inspections every year. And then they'll also give you free tune-ups or oil changes. And that's something that they just give away because they know the $70 that they spend on your oil change or the $20 they spend on your inspection sticker for the next 2 or 3 years, that because they've built this relationship with you, that when you buy your new car 3 years down the road, you're going to come and spend thousands of dollars on that car. Or when your spouse needs a car, you're going to come and spend that money, or your child needs a car. They know that they're going to get the bigger payoff later on. So they're willing to make a small sacrifice now so that they can get a better payoff later. Whereas a scammer is now or never. Look, let's get this transaction done. You know, I don't care about what happens later. If I don't do it now, then I'm never going to get anything out of you. And so they kind of rush you through that transaction. A good salesperson really wants to empower you. And they really want you to have all the information that you need to make the best decision for you, which of course will be a win for them. And so we know that knowledge is power, and they're willing to give you that information. They're very forthcoming with information. They're willing to answer your questions and really walk through step by step with you to get you to a place where you feel like you're making a good decision. Whereas a scammer really wants control. And so they want to hold back some information. They really don't want to tell you everything because they've realized that some of the information that you may be asking, if they tell you, you're not going to make the decision that's going to benefit them. And so they don't want you to be empowered. They want control of the conversation. And they'll fast talk you. They'll give you shady or vague answers to the questions you might be asking. But in any case, they're not empowering you to make the decision. They're controlling that whole situation. And then finally, a good salesperson is going to be patient with you. They're not going to pressure you. They're not going to force you into any type of decision. They're going to answer your questions. They're going to give you time to think about it. And they're going to make sure that you feel comfortable about the whole situation and the transaction so that all of these other things fall into place. There's a long-term relationship, there's sacrifice for later, but they're going to be patient with you and walk you through that. Whereas a scammer is going to try to force you into quick action. And so they're going to push you to make a decision as quickly as possible because they want what they want. And they realize that, again, the more time I spend here, the less time I have an opportunity to scam someone else. So all of that said, I'm going to provide some guiding principles. And my guiding principle around this particular situation is that if they're not good salespeople, then they just might be scammers. And what I mean by that is, if the person you're dealing with has any of the qualities of someone on the left or the right-hand side of your screen, any of these scammer qualities, then you might just be dealing with a scammer. And so you really want to make sure that you can trust this person that you're working with. So some of the ways that we can handle bad salespeople, who very well may be scammers, would be one, we need to control the conversations ourselves. We need to ask the questions we need to ask, and we need to not allow ourselves to be dragged around by this person. A lot of times we see people with some of those qualities when we're dealing with salespeople, and we want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and we shouldn't. We need to control that conversation. It's our money that we're spending. We're the ones that's going to have to live with the decision for a long time. So we need to control it. We need to ask the questions we need to ask. But we also need to take our time and consider what our needs are. So we're going to buy something. It's got to fit our particular situation. We're probably solving a problem that we already have. Let's figure out what that problem is, and let's take our time to do that and not be rushed. Again, asking the questions we need to ask. I know for myself, sometimes I need some silence. So I need to be away from the salesperson before I make a decision. And with that said, I may say, I need a few minutes to myself. Let me get my thoughts together. Let me make sure that this is something I want to do. But again, it's one way that I can handle someone who's trying to push me into a situation I'm not ready for. And then also we can request a different salesperson. We don't have to go along with the person that walks up to us first. We can say, hey, is there someone else who can help me? Is there a manager on duty? I'm not sure I'm getting what I need here, but let me find someone else that I can work with. We can go to a different establishment even if we want to. But that's kind of how we balance or handle bad salespeople with the thought process that the salesperson, a good salesperson, is going to be on our side and we're going to be comfortable. And the bad salesperson or a scammer is going to be someone who's going to be pushing us into a situation that doesn't feel comfortable for us. With that said, I want to move on to the next topic, which is emotional manipulation, how scammers use our emotions against us. And so when I think about scams and emotional manipulation, I like to put emotions in three basically different baskets. One basket I call fear-based emotions, one I call pain-based, and one I call kind of entitlement emotions. So with the fear-based emotions, it could be something as simple as generalized fear or anxiety, or I feel concerned about a particular topic, or even I'm just afraid of a particular topic. And when those types of emotions, there's certain scams that happen that feed to those emotions. The same is true for pain-based emotions. And this pain-based emotions could be either physical pain or emotional pain. So if I'm in a state of despair or a state of desperation, or whether I have grief and heartache, maybe my spouse passed away, or I broke up with my beloved person, or I could just feel desperate and hopeless, lonely and isolated, or I could be in actual physical pain. I have aching back, or my feet hurt, or whatever physical ailment might have me just kind of suffering in that type of pain. So again, there's certain scams that kind of play towards those types of emotions. And then finally, the area I call entitlement is just general entitlement. I feel entitled to something, or I'm just greedy. I just want anything that I can get my hands on. I can pull things in just because I want them. Or sometimes anger can put me in this entitlement state where if I'm mad at Medicare because all they want to do is take from me, then I'm going to take from them. Or the other one I call fear of missing out, or FOMO. We've heard that before. Sometimes in that state of fear of missing out, I kind of feel like I'm being taken advantage of. And so I'm reacting to that fear of missing out on something or being taken advantage of. And while it's not in the fear-based category, I put it in entitlement because it kind of goes the same way with some of the scams that fall there. So we're going to look at these emotions and the scams that are attracted to them. And just to state that scammers utilize this method of kind of emotional manipulation on us for one basic reason, is that when we're emotional, we tend to not make the best decisions. We kind of make bad decisions when we are emotional. So if they can manipulate our emotions and play on those emotions, then they can get us into decisions that we probably shouldn't be making. So first off, let's start with some fear-based emotions and some of the scams that go along with that. So we're talking about fear and anxiety. Obviously, COVID-19. So this is a situation where people are afraid. And if you're elderly, if you have other health conditions that could exacerbate the COVID virus, then it is a scary situation. And scammers will play on that. And the way they play on that is they connect with you on whatever that emotion is. So if you're afraid of the virus, they can say, wow, it's really scary out there, especially if you have hypertension or diabetes. It's very important that you protect yourself and you have a desire to protect yourself. And you start to think as that vulnerable person that, wow, they really get me. They really understand me. And they play on ginning up that fear from you, and then they can catch you in that scam. The same is true for imposter scams. Of course, an imposter scam is when a scammer pretends to be someone else. And so again, that fear, if it's a government agency, Medicare, the IRS, the Social Security Administration, if you don't know how those organizations work, or you generally just have a fear of the government or some of the things that they can do or not do for you, like losing your benefits or getting you arrested, then scammers will play on that and they'll use that against you. But those types of scams kind of play into that fear-based emotions. With pain-based emotions, durable medical equipment or healthcare scams. If you're in physical pain and someone calls you and says, hey, we understand that you have backache problems. We can send you a brace. It'll be free to you and you can have it to help support your back. The person that's vulnerable on the other end says, oh, thank God, someone's here to help me. I feel supported. Yes, send me whatever. What happens is the scammers will send you 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different braces, and then they'll charge Medicare for each one of those. Not only do they go against go against your benefits, but it's wasted because you only need the back brace because that's what's hurting you. But you get your brace, you never report it, and you've just fallen for the scam. And it's just because you feel that physical pain and it just makes you more vulnerable. Romance scams also go on this pain base. So if it's an emotional pain, or if you're feeling lonely or desperate or heartbroken, the offer of love and hope is something that you kind of gravitate towards. Since COVID-19, romance scams have been on the rise, and they've risen in this past year faster than they have before. And that's because a lot of people are alone and isolated and lonely. And they've also been introduced to the internet in ways that they haven't before. And so they're on dating sites, they're being perpetrated through social media, they're being perpetrated through email. And a romance scam is when someone pretends to fall in love with another person, and they start to build this relationship online through social media, through email, or through texting of what have you. But they're in this relationship for a few months because these romance scammers can be pretty patient. And then further on down the line, when they feel like they're really in love, the scammer will then start to ask for money. Oh, I lost my job due to COVID and I can't pay my rent. Can you lend me $200? And because this vulnerable person who's heartbroken and in despair is in love, then they start to send them money. And so this month, it's the car broke down. Next month is I can't afford my rent. The next month, my dog got hit by a car and I've got to take him to the vet. But they start to pilfer money off of these vulnerable individuals because they're emotionally attached to them based on their emotional state. And so out of love, they keep sending this money, and this can go on for months, for years, that they're sending hundreds and thousands of dollars to individuals that are really just scamming them, because they're not just doing it with the person that we know, they're doing this to other people all at the same time because they've never met them before. They're doing this all through virtual media. And then another scam that works here is elder financial fraud. Again, a lot of times seniors are lonely, they're isolated, they're by themselves. They may be grief-stricken, and because they've lost a loved one, they're suffering from grief, but also could be suffering from being overwhelmed and having to deal with a number of things they haven't had to deal with before, whether it's things that are around the house, or it could be their financial situation. But whatever the case, when someone comes along to offer either companionship or assistance, they tend to latch onto that person because they're helping them and supporting them and assisting them. But then that individual, whether it's a caregiver or even a family member, then starts to ask for money for many different things. Again, it could be a story about the car, it could be a story about schooling. And for different reasons, typically fear of this person going away, they start to give this individual money. So the senior's thinking in their minds that, hey, if I don't give them the money, then they're probably going to leave and not come back. But then at that point, who's going to help me? What's going to become of me if I don't keep them around? So if it just takes me giving them money to keep them around, I'll go along with it, even though they're really just being taken advantage of by the person that is supposedly being their companion or their assister. And then when we look at entitlement, the scams that kind of go along with this, again, entitlement, this is a mindset. It's an emotional kind of a mindset where people are feeling entitled, and they'll say things like, because I'm paying for it, I want it. I'm entitled to it. I'm supposed to have this. If I'm paying my premiums each month, whether I need it or not, I'm entitled to it. And that could be anger because the government takes and takes, so I'm going to take what I deserve. Or it could be, I'm just greedy and I just want everything. I had an uncle who, if they were sending it out and it was free, he was going to get it. And inside of his garage, he had collected years and years worth of things that he just didn't need. And what that equates to is waste. Someone is sending that to you, it's not costing you anything, but yet they're billing Medicare for it on a monthly basis, or whatever time frame they're billing Medicare. And those are thousands of dollars that could be used elsewhere in the system, could lower premiums, could be less money that we're putting into Medicare, but yet it's sitting there being wasted because someone just feels like they're entitled to it. But people are out there, and we probably know people that have that disposition, and they fall for the scams that come along with that. Same thing with insurance scams, fear of missing out. Is there a better deal out there? An insurance person unsolicitedly calls you and says, hey, I can get you the same thing for a lower price and you can get some additional premiums. But because they're a scammer, they call you unsolicitedly and they're really trying to get out of you is the deal of you changing your insurance. So they're going to tell you whatever you want to hear, and you're going to ask the questions, you may ask some basic questions like, is my prescription on your formulary? The true answer might be yes, but it may be tier 4 that's going to cost you more, where you're already paying the lowest price you can pay now, but they're not going to get into all of that with you. And because of that fear of missing out, that I could be getting a better deal, it makes you susceptible to that particular scam. And the same thing with COVID-19 scams. We've seen people, because they're trying to get on the list early or trying to gain access to the scam early, then they are falling for people calling saying, I can get you early access to the scam, or I can get you early access to the vaccine. And that's something that's a position that we don't want people to be in, because no one can get early access. No one can pay to get access to the vaccine. So those would be all what you would fear under entitlement scams. So my guiding principle here is don't make important decisions when you're in an emotional state. And what that requires you to do, or all of us as individuals to do, is to think about, first of all, do I fit in any of those categories? Do I find myself feeling grief-stricken or lonely or isolated? Or am I one of those entitlement people where I feel like I'm going to get what I can get if I can get it for free? And if that mindset is on you, then really kind of pacing yourself and realizing, hey, that makes me susceptible to scams. How do I change that? How do I put myself in a better position so that I'm really listening and being critical about the things that I'm hearing. Okay, I wanted to share this commercial with you. You may have seen this on television, and I thought it was interesting because it hits on some of the things we just kind of talked about, especially with the entitlement scams. There's a part in the commercial where there are two beneficiaries talking, and they hit 4 of the things that we kind of discussed in this last slide we just talked about. Now, before I start the commercial, I want to say that I'm not telling you that this commercial is a scam. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that they're using some of the things that scammers use to pull people into the conversation because they become kind of hot buttons for people that fall into that mindset. And so I'm not endorsing this group, but I'm also not saying that they're scammers. So I'm going to repeat that because I want to make sure that's clear.
Hi, folks. Joe Namath here. And if you're on Medicare, today is one of the only days of this year you can update your coverage and benefits. Before the deadline, you're entitled to eliminate copays and get dental, prescriptions, transportation, and meals at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month.
I called to get dental, transportation, meals, and the Give Back benefit. They helped me so much.
With this virus situation, I called to get everything I'm entitled to. I couldn't believe I was missing out on so many benefits.
With the uncertainty of the virus, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Don't miss the deadline. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-775-9500. That's 1-800-775-9500 now.
Okay, so again, not saying that this is a scam by any stretch of the imagination, nor am I endorsing the Medicare Coverage Helpline, but if you listen to those beneficiaries, there are 4 things that were said that kind of fit the narrative that we just kind of talked about. The first beneficiary said, they helped me so much. And some seniors are in that position where they just want help. They just need someone to help them. And it makes them a little bit more vulnerable because of that particular emotional state that they're in. The second beneficiary said 2 things. She said, I called because I wanted to get everything I'm entitled to. And that, again, is hitting on that hot button of feeling entitled, like I've got to get everything that belongs to me. She also said that, what was the second thing she said? She said something about, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going forward instead of backwards. She said,
Hi, folks. Joe Namath here. And if you, with the uncertainty
On so many benefits.
With the
On so many benefits.
That she was missing out on so many different benefits, that she had this missing out feeling that I'm missing stuff that I could be having that I didn't have. And so she's missing out on those benefits. And then he went into the uncertainty of the virus, kind of ginning up the fear around the virus and what people are doing. Again, I'm not saying that's a scam, but those are hot buttons that people emotionally are attached to, and they respond to those things. So those are that's emotional manipulation that we just talked about. I want to get into the next thing, which is phone tactics. Some of the things that scammers do, how they've mastered phone technology and conversations. Now, we talked a little bit more about this on our last webinar, where we talked about COVID and talked about how they use the phone. We're going to cover some of those same things again, but I just want to, again, bring out some of the ways that the scammers use this. First of all, scammers are going to use unsolicited calls just in general. They're going to make unsolicited calls. And just to be clear, an unsolicited call is a call that you have no idea who they are, why they're calling. You did not give them permission to call. If you've gone to Walmart and you've met with an insurance agent and you've signed your name and given them your phone number and then they call you and start to talk to you, all that's completely legal and that would not be considered an unsolicited call. An unsolicited call is someone that you have no idea how they've gotten your number and they're calling you out of the blue and they want to get you on the phone. And one of the ways they do that is call spoofing. This is when they manipulate caller ID to disguise their number or to impersonate another number. I think last month, someone shared, there was a participant who was from the Social Security Administration, and she talked about how the spoofers or the scammers are able to manipulate the caller ID to make it look like they're calling from the Social Security Administration and there's a legitimate Social Security Administration number. Here we are a month later, and the scammers have gotten even more specific. So one of the scams that they're coming up with now is that they're able to mimic your doctor's office and your doctor's phone number. And so they're targeting in on specific individuals with their doctor's name and doctor's phone number, or their doctor's practice and their doctor's phone number on the call. We had someone here call, and she had that exact situation happen. When she looked at caller ID, she thought it was her doctor, and it matched her doctor's phone number. Surely when she got on the phone, it was a scammer trying to get her to do some genetic testing and buy some braces or get some braces for free. And so we were able to trace some of that back and hopefully give that information. Well, we've given that information to OIG, but they're getting more and more sophisticated as we go on. So you can't even trust your caller ID anymore when you see it. So they're spoofing calls, but they're also misrepresenting themselves, of course, saying that there's someone that they're not. Whether that's Medicare, Social Security Administration, the IRS, those are the big ones that are happening. But then what they do is they jump right into the story. We talked about the structure of the calls during our last webinar. And the big part of the call is the story. And so scammers, what they do is they try to bypass all the preliminary information to get to the story. And so they'll want to drag you in, or at least pull you into the conversation by getting you into the story. They'll say things like, I'm calling to make sure that you're aware of, and they'll give this obscure fact. And you start to think, wow, I didn't know that. And then they start to drag you in further by telling you more and more about this if you bite onto that. Or we're calling and checking in on Medicare beneficiaries to make sure that they've received this particular benefit. And again, they start talking to you about that benefit, but they've just bypassed the fact that you have no idea who they are and where they're calling from, but they've gotten you because of this story. Or there's a problem with your bank account, credit card account, and we just need to verify some information. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, there's a problem. What's the problem? How do I fix it? And again, you've bypassed the fact that you don't know who this individual is. And now your physician is called and asked us to confirm XYZ information. But all of these ways are the ways they bypass the important information to jump to their story to lure you into the conversation. So the guiding principle here is always be suspicious of unsolicited callers. I like to say that an unsolicited caller is like a stranger approaching you in a parking lot. You should no more trust an unsolicited caller than you should trust a person approaching you in a parking lot. How do we handle unsolicited calls? One, ignore them. If you have caller ID and you don't recognize the number, or you're not expecting the call, ignore the call. If it's important, most of the time it's going to go to voicemail, but more than likely you're not going to miss out on something that's going to be important. Two, never verify, confirm, or provide sensitive information to an unsolicited caller. Scammers are sophisticated. They've gotten information from somewhere, and a lot of times they'll call and they know your name, they know your address, they know your birth date, and then they need you to verify your Social Security number or your bank account number or your credit card number or your Medicare number. And they just want you to verify to make sure they're talking to the right person. Don't do it, because scammers have all of that back information on you, and they're trying to fill in the blanks so they can steal your identity. So we don't give them any information. And then also, if there's a situation where we're not sure, if the caller ID says it's our doctor and then the number says it's our doctor, and we're still not sure because they're asking for sensitive information, then we hang up the call and dial from a published, known, or trusted number. We don't want to give that information over the phone if we're not sure for sure that that's who we're talking to. So if it's our doctor's office, or if it's the Social Security Administration, or whoever it might be that might be calling us, then we want to make sure before we give out that type of information by hanging up and calling from a published number or a number that we already know. Okay, we're going to move into phishing. And phishing is, we're going to talk about understanding how scammers use email and text messages to steal your information. You all may have heard of phishing, but phishing is when a scammer seeks to lure consumers by text messages or email or advertisements in providing personal or financial information. And phishing has become one of the most dangerous forms of scams because it puts all of your personal and sensitive information at risk, because they can get into your system. Basically, they're going to send you an email or a text or something, and they're going to want you to click on it. And by clicking on whatever they're sending you, you could be doing a number of things. One, it could be luring you to a website to provide them information that you don't want them to have. It could be downloading something onto your computer that gives them access to your computer, either by extracting information or going through and manipulating your computer. And so some of the texts or emails that will come through will say things like, your password has expired and needs to be updated. And so click on the link, follow the link, and you can update your password. If you guys are looking at my computer, and on the lower right, it has it looks like Bank of America, but it actually says Bank of Americans. And it says something about people have been trying to log into your account, and click on the link here so that you can verify and change your password for your account. They might say something like your payment method needs to be updated. We've been trying to charge your monthly, whether it's Amazon Prime or your monthly whatever statement you might be paying, and they've been unable to do so because something's wrong with your credit card payment, so we need to update your credit card payment. Or someone has tried to log into your account incorrectly, we need you to reset your password. But all they want you to do is get you to click on that link. And so what you could be doing when you click on that link is it could be taking you to a fake, if your Amazon Prime account, it's a fake Amazon Prime login page. You put in your username and your password, and basically you've just given them your username and password. So now they can go on your actual account and extract information using your email and password. It could be the same for your bank account. It could be the same for your credit card account. But once you click on that link, you've given them access to something, and you want to make sure you stay away from it. Guiding principle here is, if you're unsure of the sender, don't ever click on the link. If you don't know who that sender is, you don't ever want to click on the link that they send you. Next month, when we do our monthly webinar, we're actually doing a monthly webinar on phishing emails. And so we're going to have actual live fake emails that have actually been sent out, and look at all the different ways we can identify whether or not it's real or fake. And scammers have become really good. So not to say that you're going to be able to catch every fake one, but there's some telltale signs in many of the emails that are being sent out. And so our next webinar is going to be dedicated to that. But again, if we're unsure of the sender, we don't want to click the link. So how do we handle phishing emails? One, we delete without clicking. We just move forward, we delete it, we don't look at it, we read it, it's a scam, we delete it, we don't mess with it. The other thing we can do is, if we're not sure that if it's a real email or a fake one, and I received one of these, I thought it was fake, but you leave the email and then go directly to a website to log in to get the information that you're looking for. So if it says your password is expired, don't click on the link in the email, leave the email alone, and go directly to your account online and log in online so that you can pull that up. And you'll be able to tell if your email or your account or password is expired, because it'll tell you it's expired, and it'll give you on that particular site exactly what you need to do to update your password. And then finally, if you want to report your phishing email, you can report it to ftc.gov. FTC, of course, is the Federal Trade Commission. On their site, they're going to have a space where you can, they might even allow you to forward an email to them so they can see it, but you can certainly report the fact that you've got an email from a certain scammer, and they may ask you for email addresses or things like that. But again, next month, we're going to do a whole webinar on that, and you'll be able to see different ways, there's different things inside the email that you can tell whether or not it's a fake email or a scam email. All right, the last thing we're going to talk about is how scammers use time and pressure to make you act quickly. Now, what we already know is that scammers use pressure tactics because they work. When people are pressuring you to do something, more than likely, you'll go along with it a lot of times, because being pressured is a very uncomfortable feeling. And if you're feeling pressured, then you're going to almost do anything you can to get out from underneath that pressure. When people can kind of wear you down with that pressure, a lot of times people agree to things they don't want to agree to just so that they're not feeling that uncomfortable feeling anymore. And so some of the things that scammers say while they're on a call with you is, in order to pressure you into making a decision right away, they're going to tell you that this offer is only available today. If you don't accept it now, you won't ever have this chance again. And if it's something that you're really considering or something that you really want, then you start to feel like, gosh, I don't want to miss out on this opportunity, but that's pressure to get you to act quickly in the way that they want you to act. It gets a little more ominous with some of the other calls. So they'll tell you things like, if you don't do this now or cooperate with us, then we will close your account and you can lose your benefits. So this is what happens on some of the Medicare scams. So calling Medicare beneficiaries saying that your Medicare card is being changed from a paper card to a plastic card. And if you don't verify your number, we can't get it to you. You're going to end up losing your benefits in the process. And people are thinking, wow, I can't be in a position where I don't have my prescription, so I'll just kind of go along with the situation. But it's pressure that's being put on them to make this decision. They don't have time to research, they don't have time to get it all figured out, but they're just trying to make sure they can maintain their particular situation because of this pressure. And then it gets a little bit more ominous. If you don't cooperate with us, we have no choice but to send the authorities to your home and arrest you. This happens with some of the IRS scams. So the IRS people or these IRS scammers are saying that their number has been implicated in some type of fraud. And because of this implication in fraud, if you don't cooperate with us and give us the information we're asking for, we're going to send people to your house to arrest you. You can be paying a fine, you can be sued, and you can do jail time. And so again, this pressure is being put on people to get them to act quickly. So the guiding principle here is this. When someone is pressuring you to make a decision, that decision is going to benefit them more than it's going to benefit you. And that alone should tell you that you need more time to think about this. If they're pressuring you to make a decision, that's because they're going to get the bigger benefit out of this decision than you are. You also need to know IRS, Social Security Administration, Medicare, they're not going to call, they're not going to pressure you. And so you don't have to worry about that. But anyone outside of that, one, if you get a call from any of those three, then you know it's a scam. But anyone outside of that that's pressuring you, it could be a family member, it could be your neighbor. But if they're pressuring you, it's because it's going to benefit them more than it benefits you. And for that reason alone, you should be cautious. So we handle pressure, one, by asking for more time to think about it or discuss it with a family member or friend. You know, I just need some time. I need the time to figure it out. If they don't want to give you that time, then the answer should be no. You deserve that time because you want, again, this is going to benefit them and you're going to have to live with this decision. So almost demand that time. Or if it's someone on the phone, ask them to mail you something so that you can review it, not email it, but put it in the mail. Any legitimate company is going to have some type of literature that you can read up on them. And so again, you want to make sure that it gives you some time so you can do your research and get it all figured out. The other way to do it is just to simply say no. If you start to feel uncomfortable, start to feel pressured, you're in a situation now with someone that you almost can't trust because they're trying to pressure you to make a decision that you're not ready to make. And so simply saying no is the way to get out of that situation. So we've talked about scammers versus salespeople. We've talked about emotional manipulation, we've talked about phishing, we've talked about phone tactics, and we've talked about pressure. I want to open up the floor just for questions, feedback, and comments about what we've talked about today. So if you have something or have a question or feedback or comment, go ahead and raise your hand. I'm going to unmute you, and we're going to answer your questions. All right, David looks like he's got his hand up. Go ahead, David, and unmute yourself.
Okay, a principle that I use is never provide information to any party unless I initiated the contact. So if I get a phone call out of the blue, right off the bat, I'm not going to give them any information because I really don't know who they are. So that is a principle that I use.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head there. And that's exactly what you don't want. You want to position yourself so that you know exactly who you're giving that information to. And you only want to give it to them if it's absolutely necessary. I think Martin has his hand up. Martin, I'm going to go ahead and unmute yourself and share your comment.
Yeah, Sean, very good presentation. One of the things that we need to know, or we need to realize, is that all the scams are based on our emotions. There are no scams out there that are based on our intelligence. So the scammers want to get us emotionally involved. And when you say, the salesperson versus the scammer, that's 100% right. And one of the things that I have found out during my research is that a good scammer will also do a lot of stuff that the good salesperson will do. Because what they want to do is they want to get you emotionally attached to them and have you trust them and build a trust with them before they start the pressure of the scam on it. So that's the thing where they're building the trust, the emotional trust on you on that one area. And everything's based on emotion. And the other thing is, when you were saying no, we should all develop a no response, period. One of the ladies that I work with, her no response is, what part of no don't you understand? And when you give the no response, you start it like a broken record. You just keep saying no to the scammer, just repeat it, and they will sooner or later give up and realize that you're wasting their time, and they'll drop you.
Excellent. Thank you, Martin. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Sean.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Rose raised her hand. Rose, I think, go ahead and unmute yourself. I think, there we go. Yeah, unmute yourself and go ahead and then share with us.
Sean, I know that a lot of times when you reach a certain age, you want your own privacy. You don't really want to share everything with everybody because you just don't know who to trust at that point. But at some point, I think we need to tell our seniors that there should be one person in their life, one person at least, that they need to talk to before they make any major decisions. I think we have to encourage that, and we have to encourage them to build a relationship with that person so that that person knows, enough about them to be able to give them the right direction in handling such things as these.
I think you're right. I think everyone, certainly, I mean, we can do nothing by ourselves. And as far as seniors getting older and getting more reclusive, that's also true. One thing that they suggest, because a lot of times when seniors are dealing with a single individual, is that it does make them vulnerable to elder fraud. And so what they say is, for example, if I have 3 brothers, they say a team approach into dealing with that sibling or dealing with that senior. So for example, I may be my mother's go-to person, but I'm not in that alone where I could manipulate her. I've got my other brothers that are kind of teaming up with me to make sure that we're all taking care of my mother together, even though that I may be her one go-to person. But I think you're absolutely right, Rose. I appreciate that. Anybody else? All right, well, I think that's everyone. So let's do this. I'm gonna go ahead and just move forward just a little bit with my next slide. Basically, again, next month, the monthly webinar is gonna be on phishing scams, how to identify them and avoid getting hooked. We're gonna look at some different types of phishing scams. We're gonna show you some actually phishing emails, and then show you some of the things in those emails that you can identify to say this might be a scam. That's Wednesday, March 17th, is exactly a month from today. If you're on this particular webinar, you'll get a direct email to sign up or take you to a link where you can sign up if you'd like to attend. And of course, it'll be in a number of other places. We have our monthly webinar. We also have a monthly newsletter. It'll be advertised in there. If you're not familiar with our monthly newsletter, you can get a copy of it or get on the email list through our website, which is virginiasmp.com. At our website, you can sign up, you can look at different news, you can sign up for our newsletter, our webinars, and you can also download some of the resources that we've created and have put up from the SMP. You can also connect with us by Facebook, by Twitter, and then also by YouTube. This particular presentation is going to be on YouTube, so you can watch it again or you can share it with your friends. But we put up all the monthly webinars on YouTube, as well as some other information that we find that we curated from around the community. Our YouTube page is pretty new, so we only have a few videos up, but as we go throughout the year, we'll be posting more and more information. And with that, I say thank you to all of you. I look forward to next month, and hopefully we'll have you there again. I think there's some information in the chat. Great, Joanne. I did see it is being recorded and it will go up on the website. All right, with that said, again, thank you all again, and I look forward to speaking with you all soon. Take care.